Welcome to a very special Nerds and Friends exclusive. Today, me and Mike Farrell are talking about the god, the son of Odin, Thor, and his director, Taika Waititi, who is behind me in the background right here.
Yes, that's a wonderful photo that you have.
Thank you. Yes, it was. I got to meet Taika at a screening at the Directors Guild. It was Directors Guild or Producers Guild, I forget, but it was for Jojo Rabbit, which is a great movie. Can't promote that enough. Excellent movie. And so he was very kind, very nice to talk to. So
Yes, he's a great director. I've met him twice actually.
oh really? That's awesome.
Yeah, I met him. I met him on two separate occasions. I was at a birthday party that he was at, and then I was at a friend's house that he was also at. This was a few years ago. Yeah, the last time I saw Taika, one of my good friends ended up in the hospital for a brain injury.
Jesus.
Yes.
I assume they're okay now.
He is, thankfully.
That's great.
But there could not be a better person than Taika. Great human being. Super friendly, down to earth dude, and Marvel owes, in my opinion, all of the success of Thor to Taika, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Because now I will dive into this.
Let's dive in.
I'm a fan of Thor 1 and 2, but Thor Ragnarok just did a rejuvenation of the franchise just in an amazing way. And I love it. I love it so much. And I can't wait to see tomorrow Thor Love and Thunder. It's exciting.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think so. I have a different opinion on Thor 1 and 2. My opinion is probably closer to what everybody feels about Thor 1 and 2, but obviously you found some redeeming qualities about it. But let's jump into Thor 1 and 2 and the evolution of this character before we get into Thor 4. So I guess we'll talk about 1, 2, 3, and then what we hope to see in Thor 4. So in my opinion, Josh, I think that Thor 1 and 2 it was in Marvel's growing pains, because this was back in stage 1.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So stage 1. So you had Iron Man 1, you had Thor 1 and 2. It was Thor 2 in stage 2, or were they both in stage 1?
I believe Thor 2 was stage 1, actually. Or no, yeah, it was all pre-Avengers. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thor 2 was after the Avengers, but it was shortly after the Avengers. And Iron Man 2 was pre-Avengers, if that helps. I don't know.
Yes. So just to remind the viewers out there, Thor 1, Loki is the chief nemesis and a metal fire robot from Asgard.
Yes.
But Loki's in control.
And as Nick Fury says, he leveled a small town in New Mexico. Like, we can't let that go,
Yes. And there was that iconic, in that film, Thor had his powers taken away and he had to become worthy again.
Right.
Got his powers back, and then he has to fight some robot, with the greater boss being Loki, who he doesn't actually have to fight.
Right.
And so
and my argument would be that for Loki, the stakes were low for the villain fight, but the journey getting there, the fish out of water story of, okay, this guy's a god, he's royalty, and now he's on Earth and he's having to interact with people. That was fun. I loved it. I had a great time with Kenneth Branagh, the director, really hit that humor, that Marvel note where it's like humor but serious but not really, and I thought it was great.
I think that the challenge with Thor 1 and Thor 2, and just to quickly recap the plot of Thor 2, is all about the ether. It's all
and the
about
Dark Elves. Yeah.
and the Dark Elves, and it's basically the ether goes into Jane Foster, who is played by Natalie Portman, and they have to determine how to get this out of her while the Dark Elves are trying to take over. Loki is basically kind of good and bad in that one, but there is some brotherly love. And anyway, reasonable story. But here's the problem with those first two films. And even potentially with the first Avengers, and this is where Taika really changed the franchise for Thor, was that Thor was just too one-dimensional. Thor was largely big, brash, and stupid, and it wasn't.
But I got to counter. I got to say, I like that they leaned into him being from a fantasy world and being entitled. And so when he was in the Avengers, he was totally acting in character of, I'm the god of thunder. Like, what are you peons doing, you know? And so it was a fun contrast to the other heroes, which while at times it could be frustrating because he wasn't being the most logical, I felt that it was in character and it fits. It was fun. So
it was fun in character. It fits, but everything was, there wasn't.
In Thor 1 and 2, you have Thor. He's established. He's fun. He's cool. He's powerful, and his knowledge of who he is, contrasting with the rest of the world, that dynamic was fun to play with. But then in Thor Ragnarok, Taika came on and was like, "Let's give him character development," and it was fucking awesome.
Yes. As of now, not having seen Thor 4,
yes, me neither.
Thor 3 is beyond any shred of doubt the best Thor film.
One of the best MCU films, period.
It's a top 5 MCU film.
Absolutely.
I would agree. I think Iron Man 1 is a close contender for number 1. I think that Infinity War was excellent. But this film, if it's not in your top 3, it's got to be in your top 5.
I agree.
Thor 3, beyond a shadow of doubt. But the thing is, though, Josh, is that Thor 1 and Thor 2, neither of those cracked the top 10.
Thor 1 is in my top 10. I'm just throwing that out there.
Maybe, but how high on the list?
Number 9, I'm an outlier. It is 8 or 9. So it's I'm an outlier. I know that. It's okay.
So all that I'm trying to say is that Taika took this character who was fairly one-dimensional, who you have pointed out behind you, and he turned that franchise on its head. He layered in his New Zealand style humor, which is a very difficult, like, I don't think anybody can pull off that humor. I think it's vaguely Guardians of the Galaxy-esque, but it's more Flight of the Conchords humor. You can only relate it back to other Taika Waititi properties.
That's why he's our generation's auteur. He's our comedy Quentin Tarantino, in my opinion. He's brilliant. I mean, if you look at everything he's done, it's amazing. And the way he was able to take Thor's character and progress him in a humorous way, but in a powerful and like meaningful way, amazing. I love it.
Yes, because the one thing that Taika does well is he finds a simple through line that is relatable to the everyday person. Because I think that what was challenging before was that it's just so like anytime you do something about a superhero that is for all intents and purposes bulletproof,
Yeah.
the Superman challenge where it's like, okay, you got to give them kryptonite or what have you, where it doesn't seem like anything can kill them, and because they're godlike, it creates a level of isolation. And
Absolutely.
so to ground the character, he basically took Thor 3 and said, okay, this is really a story about a guy who just wants to get home.
Yes.
That's all it was. So he's very good at making a connection that's relatable to you, to me, to the viewers. And that's as easy as it seems. That's really hard to pull off.
It is, because when you have that dichotomy of a character who has a very simple stake where he's like, I want to get home, I want to survive, I want to reconcile with my brother, but you have his godlike powers. Making that work is so hard, and Taika did it so expertly in Thor Ragnarok, and that's why I love that movie. I watched it the other day again, and I was like, this is amazing, you know.
So here's a little behind the scenes that our viewers will appreciate. So when my buddy was in the ER because of his head injury, and I had like I said before, I had hung out with Taika a little bit at his birthday party. The other person that was there at the birthday party was a guy named Brad, and Brad, whose last name escapes me, Brad is the producer on Thor 3. He was also the producer on Ant-Man.
Brad Lemke or something. I forget his last name.
I believe it's Winterbomb.
Oh,
yeah, I believe it is. Yeah, I'd have to look. But Brad, great guy. We were just sitting there chatting in the lobby of the ER, right? And this dude is like, he is the champion behind Taika. They're great pals. And I remember chatting with Brad about what
Brad Winderbaum, you're right, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. So Brad told me, he said, because I said, dude, what you guys did with Thor 3 was so phenomenal. Like it's like, at that time, I think I told him, I said, dude, it's like my number 2 favorite film of all time. And he said, oh, what's number 1? I said, Iron Man 1. And he's like, oh man. And he's like, I love that. And another guy was there. He's like, oh, I loved Ant-Man 1. And Brad started laughing because he's like, I produced that as well. So I'm glad that you guys both appreciate these films are in the top 5. But Brad told me, he showed me the pitch reel that Taika presented to get the director role. And it was just images, and I believe it was that song, the da-na,
fucking Pink Floyd,
yes.
The Immigrant Song.
Yeah, so it was that, and you could see everything that Taika wanted to do just within that pitch reel. And
pitch reels are so hard to nail. Like, that's amazing that he won it just off that. Because I mean, before Thor Ragnarok, I mean, what was his biggest thing? It was What We Do in the Shadows, the feature length film, right?
Well, it was that, and it was is it Beware of the Wilder People? What is the one about?
Oh yeah, I forget the title, but I haven't seen it, but I know he worked on that. Yeah.
And then I think he did another one called it was something about a boy. I forgot. Maybe it was The Boy or something. Like he oftentimes writes stories about he's it's almost like he's a comedic Goonies writer. He really taps into the childhood very well. And
yes. I mean, the way he did in Jojo Rabbit was chef's kiss, amazing.
Yeah, Jojo Rabbit was great as well.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing that, and I was like, oh, because it was the way that he presented his vision was, it was almost like a collage where you got to feel what he wanted to do. But I remember Brad telling me, he said that, Kevin Feige had told him they just want to blow it up. They want to blow up what they were doing before, turn it on its head, and then just scorch the earth, start from scratch.
Interesting.
And that's really where I think Taika just had a lot of creative liberty, and he just put his stamp on it immediately. So, James Gunn came in and said, hey, here's my humor, completely recognizable. This is Guardians 1. And you're like, I don't know what the fuck the Guardians of the Galaxy are, but it's amazing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Here, to have 2 Thor films and then come in with Thor 3 and say, here's 1 and 2. This is beyond shadow of doubt the best film out of the 3. That's really tough to do for a 3rd film.
Oh, I can't imagine the pressure, and just, I mean, he came in and he really stuck true to himself and what he knew would work well, and it translates, and it's fucking amazing. I love Thor Ragnarok.
It's excellent. Absolutely excellent. So I think we've set the stage of how you feel about the franchise, how I feel about the franchise. I know Thor is probably your favorite character.
He is actually, besides Luis from Ant-Man, who is he takes the cake as my favorite MCU character technically, but yeah, no, Thor is my favorite superhero. I wish they had more Thor t-shirts. I love Thor. He's great.
Dude,
because I love fantasy and I love sci-fi, and I love how Thor bridges that world in an ironic way, and it's so fun.
Well, and I joke around. I gave a nickname to Chris Hemsworth to my girlfriend. I just said, yeah, he's basically Chris Charmsworth. Because he's so good. And she's like, would you go to gay for Hemsworth? And I was like, well, I don't know who wouldn't. I mean, I would love to hang out with a dude. Probably wouldn't go gay for the dude, but I don't know, Josh.
I would. Yeah.
I don't know, but Hemsworth is one of those people where it's going to be very challenging if they ever replace the character to, because Robert Downey, obviously, you can't ever not see Iron Man when you see Robert Downey Jr. It's the perfect casting.
Yes.
There's very few MCU characters where you think, okay, no matter what, they're not going to be able to top that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think Chris Hemsworth as Thor falls into that, because I saw an interview, or I read an interview with Taika Waititi saying that Chris Hemsworth's comedic potential was untapped in the first 2 Thor movies, and so he wanted to delve into that in Thor Ragnarok. And I could not agree more, because he clearly has range. I mean,
totally.
As someone who's studied acting and stuff, like his work to get to that physique for Thor is a whole other thing. That's its whole own thing. But
yeah,
besides that, he hits the comedic notes. He hits the emotional notes. He has range. Chris Hemsworth is a fucking good actor, and I really appreciate him as Thor. So
he's an excellent actor. I remember when he's sort of the dialogue he's having between him and Rocket, where you're and this was in either Infinity War or Endgame, I forget which one it was, but you're hearing about how he lost his mom, lost his brother. I mean, his emotion for losing his brother, his mom, his dad, it jumps off the screen. Like it's palpable. And to go from that and then also have to weave in the humor right after that, where you know, he has that line with the dwarf when he's forging when they're forging Stormbreaker.
Yeah.
Because you go from a very dark moment, this moment where he's recognizing the death of his family, to him basically dying and dropping that line that you'd have to kill me first, or whatever the line is, and then he says he says, "Yes, boy, that's what dead means."
Yeah.
What is the line that I'm thinking of?
No, you're thinking of the guy from Game of Thrones, Tyrion Lannister.
Yeah.
The brilliant actor. His lines. He says, "Thor, you're gonna die," and Thor says, "I'll hold the sun," or whatever, and then he goes, "You'll have to kill me first," and then the dwarf goes, "That's what dead means."
That's what dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
But right before that scene, it's him and Rocket having this heart to heart about his whole family being dead, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so
I think Bradley Cooper as Rocket hits those notes too, where he's playing this experimented on, tortured creature, and he brings heart and nuance to it in unexpected moments. And I think that's what James Gunn's strength is. I think that's what Taika's strength is having these fun characters, but having these really nuanced, heartfelt moments that hit you when you don't expect it, and you're just like, wow, this is amazing, you know?
So I think we both agree Thor's a great character.
Excellent
We've seen
character.
Quite the evolution. Massive strides from Thor 1 and 2 into Thor 3.
Yes.
And then going into Infinity War and Endgame.
Yes.
And seeing that arc. And so now we're picking up in Thor 4. We're finally going to talk about it. Thor 4, where at this juncture, the last that we have seen of Thor, he is hanging out with the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's about to leave New Asgard.
Yes.
He's about to embark upon a journey and become his own man, a man that isn't tied to the throne. He just gave the throne over to Valkyrie.
Yes.
Half of the Asgardians are dead. The rest of them are being protected by the queen or the king of Asgard, because I believe that she's going to be a female king.
Yeah. And they're in like what, Norway or something, and it's like, yeah.
Well, technically they're in New Asgard,
right? But I mean, they've carved out their own little niche in Norway or Denmark or something. But
right,
yeah,
it as popularized by for whatever reason, Anthony Hopkins, where he says, this could be Asgard. Asgard is not a place, it's a people.
Asgard is not a place, it's a people. Yeah.
So this is where we're picking up. And so I have a couple of questions for you.
Fire them off.
Have you been reading reviews or abstaining from these things?
I've been abstaining because I plan to see it this weekend, and I want to go into clean slate. And again, based on everything I've seen from Taika Waititi, I have full faith this movie's going to be amazing. I read some articles that were saying they had qualms about the movie not having more publicity before it came out, and concerns. And I just put all that to the side, and I said, if Taika Waititi's directing and writing, it's going to be fucking awesome. I just want to see it, you know? So
yeah. So I didn't go out of my way to read anything.
Yeah.
I heard either through a friend or like the challenging thing is that if you tell your phone, I love Thor, then you're going to get a fucking blog post and you accidentally click on it. And then you see something about some early reviews of whatever it is. And so I started seeing some of that garbage. And then I was like, okay, I certainly didn't go out of my way to see it. So I have an inkling of what the critics may be thinking, which I don't really care about. I really just care about like what are the fans think? Are they loving it? And from what I would hope they are, but I'm not going to Rotten Tomatoes. I don't want to see any, I
Right.
don't want to have any influence,
Right.
Because I'm one of those people where some people might say like, hey, Doctor Strange 2 was shit.
Doctor Strange 2 was fucking awesome. I love that movie.
And I think that Doctor Strange 2 had more redeemable qualities than not. I can see where there's challenges, but like I hate seeing like some BS overly low critic score, whatever it is, where it's like, well, you guys are trying to be ultra critical in order to get more clicks rather than actually like taking a good hard look at this. But you see that and it kind of makes you upset before you go see it, and you're like, oh man, like it influences what you think of it, whether you want it to or not.
I agree completely, and that's why I try to abstain from that stuff, because I don't want someone else's predispositions or their qualms to follow me into the movie,
Yeah. So for the viewer out there, we may chat about spoilers in the near future, because we are going to talk about Thor 4, and I do have some background on the storyline of Thor 4, and I do think that you probably do as well, Josh. So
yes.
So let's jump into how much do you know about the plot line, and if it's a lot, what are you hoping to see?
That's a great question, because I actually know very little, and I've kept it that way.
Okay, well, I won't say anything to you then.
Yes. I mean, from the trailers I've seen, because I've seen, I want to say 4 or 5 trailers, it's pretty clear. Okay, Christian Bale plays a god killer. He's targeting Thor. Him and Thor have a clash. That's the movie. But like how they get there, I'm excited to see it all, So
Okay.
okay.
I could make a prediction, and I'm trying to think about how I could make a prediction without ruining an aspect of the film, because my prediction that I've thought about what I would like to see is it's so complex that I feel like if Taika delivers it this way, then it would be perfect. But it has to deal with the weapon that Gore the God Butcher has. And so I don't know what you know about that, Josh. I don't know what you want to know about it, because I have an idea that I think would be awesome, but I don't want to reveal anything that you don't want to know about.
You know what? For the sake of this podcast, I'm excited to hear about it, because I'm a fan of the MCU, but yes, I'm not super well versed in the comics. So if you reveal something you know about Gore the God Butcher, it won't ruin it for me. So let's dive in. Let's dive in.
Okay. So Gore the God Butcher has a sword.
Yeah.
Called the Necro Sword.
Ooh.
Okay. And it is a sword that is the best way that you could describe it is that it's like venom.
Oh.
And it was created by like the first symbiote.
Oh.
Okay.
So it's like a god-killing machine, basically.
But not only that, the sword is essentially alive.
Oh.
Okay. And so in the comic, I believe that is the storyline, is that that sword that he uses is a necro sword from like that planet, that species, forged by the first symbiote of which venom comes from. Okay. So that's a little bit. So, but here's my thought. Because I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? I was like, Hela's weapons are very much like that as well.
True.
And I thought to myself, what is Hela's weapon called? Hela's weapon, per the comics, is also known as a necro sword. So what I would like to see, Josh, here's how I would tie it in. Gore, who is upset about something that happened in his childhood, you tie it back to Odin and Hela having whatever the impact is that Gore is feeling.
They're conquering of the 9 realms. Absolutely.
Yes. So in my mind, the best way to tie it together, why there would be any type of pull for Thor, was when Hela and Odin were wreaking havoc. It was them that were fucking with Gore's family or his home planet, where he has this vengeance now, right? Because his name is Gore the God Butcher, so clearly he's killing gods, right?
Yeah.
So what I would like to see, because we never saw what happened to Hela. All that we saw was that the planet exploded.
True.
So
we assumed Ragnarok consumed her, but we don't know.
She did not die on camera. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
So I picture in my mind, in the abyss, and maybe they can somehow tie this in with the symbiote thing, but I would like to see a connection where it's actually her, whatever is remaining of her, like it's there in like a like black goo, right? And but she's embodied in that weapon as well, where basically you could have the symbiote king, or whatever the fuck his name is, forge the weapon from the remnants of Hela.
Oh.
And Gore, that's what he picks up.
Gore,
because Gore needs a weapon to fuck people up.
Yeah.
Why not pick up the same sword that, or have it forged from Hela's remains?
That's a great point, because I think one of the best points of Thor Ragnarok was how powerful Hela was, and how that raised the stakes of the movie, where you're like, okay, our villain's like fucking unstoppable. How are we going to do this? And the way they circumvented it was they destroyed Asgard, and that was brilliant. And so I love that theory, and I hope it comes true. That's brilliant.
But it's so far reaching. There's so many things that have to come together. There's so many, but I just thought to myself, if anybody can make, because Taika has to create a real connection from which we see this showdown between this god and this character. And so there has to be some type of history there.
True.
But I think you can weave that together with some type of backstory flashback. And then if you can weave in that extra connection with Hela, where she's basically the goddess of death, that
she is the goddess of death. Absolutely.
She's the goddess of death. So that sword, if it's the remnants of her, it's basically a symbol that just represents death, absolute death.
Yes.
That is.
And so Thor's going to be in that position where he has to atone for a sibling he never really knew. And that puts him in I love it. I love it so much.
He would have
that comes true. Yeah.
Well, and maybe it's not even just like his sister. He may be atoning for the sins of the father, because keep in mind,
right,
this wasn't just
Odin
Hela.
is the god of bad parenting. No, I'm just kidding.
Totally. So that's what I'm hoping to see, which I was just because I just thought of that randomly. I'm like, what was that sword? And then I was like, there's such a low hanging connection there. I don't know if I'm right. I'd like to think that my mind works similar to Taika Waititi from time to time, though.
I hope so, because his mind is brilliant. So
what are you hoping to get from this? What type of arc are you anticipating? Where do you think where do you think we're going to be by the end of it?
That's a great question. I have no idea where the end note's going to be, because from the trailers and the trajectory I can see they set up in Infinity War and Endgame, Thor's going through a journey of self-discovery. And so I want to see what that looks like. And I think that's what makes it so exciting for me, is I don't know where he's going to end up. Where is he going to find that he finds himself? I don't know. And that's where I want to see it. So that's why I'm excited for Thor Love and Thunder.
I have an idea.
Let's hear it.
Which this ties into, I think this ties into the next big bad and where the direction of the MCU is going. Which,
spoiler alert, is from Loki. It's going to be Kang the Conqueror. Yeah. Holy shit, he's awesome.
He's great. Yeah. So Here's my thought. So you're caught up on Doctor Strange.
Yes.
Okay. You are. Okay. Let's just look at.
Actually, I've seen every MCU thing except for Hawkeye. Otherwise, I'm completely caught up.
Well, you probably haven't watched Miss Marvel either yet, have you?
I watched half of the first episode and I realized it wasn't for me. I'm a 31-year-old curmudgeon, and I was like, this is for high schoolers who have hope and like dreams, and I can't get into it.
So here's what I think. If you see where, if you see the consistent theme that's happening, because keep in mind when you're setting up the next big bad, you have to it's oftentimes that they'll follow some type of theme. So clearly the theme of this stage is questioning reality and the multiverse, those two things, right? Yes. And we've seen that with Loki, we've seen that with WandaVision. I don't know that we necessarily saw that with Hawkeye or not. I'm trying to remember if there were any elements of that. But if you'll notice, almost without fail, every character is becoming isolated in some way, shape, or form. So spoiler alert again, Wanda is presumed dead. Of course she's not dead, right?
Like, I hope not, because she's an amazing character.
She won't be dead. So what's happening? So Wanda's presumed dead. Doctor Strange is now supposedly taken over by another Doctor Strange because of that third eye thing, right?
Yes.
Which is interesting because it's like, how is somebody dream walking within him if there's no more Darkhold?
But he's going to rectify that incursion that him and Charlize Theron are going to go rectify that. We'll see how that plays out.
So I think that what they're going to do is they're going to isolate at least our main heroes. Caitlin Olsen presumed dead. They'll start to isolate the
main cast of the Avengers, totally.
The original ones.
Yeah.
Because then what that does is for the next like big like Avengers type film, whether that's, I don't know if that'll be Quantumania or if that'll be something that follows Quantumania.
Right.
What it's going to allow is for the new Avengers to try to assemble the team back together. And if everybody is compromised, then whoever the big bad is going to have an easier time picking them all apart while they're separated and isolated.
True.
And then they will have to reassemble, like Avengers assemble.
Yeah.
And then they'll fight the next big bad. And so my gut instinct tells me that we may not see a death, but by the end of it, it is more likely than not that that Thor is going to be somehow isolated.
I think you're right.
And I
never thought of that, but I think you're absolutely right.
And I think it could be a rescue type deal where where the new Thor, which will be Natalie Portman
Yes.
and perhaps Valkyrie, they may actually save Thor, but in doing so, Thor gets knocked off of the, Thor ends up in a different multiverse. Thor ends up somewhere where he is no longer accessible to the people that love him. Either he's in a different dimension or he's presumed dead. Something like that is going to happen by the end of it. I do not see a way in which he is still connected to Valkyrie and the Natalie Portman Thor.
Gosh, I think you're right. I'm surprised I hadn't thought of that, but I think you're absolutely correct.
I don't think he'll be dead though, but
No.
I don't think he'll be dead, but I think it has to almost be
it's almost like the end of the second Ant-Man movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp, where he goes into the quantum verse and he's gathering material. And then he's like, hey guys, where are you? And boom, they've been turned to dust by Thanos. And it was like, oh, it's going to be something like that where it's like, Thor's awesome. Fuck, he's gone. What's going to happen now?
It could even be something a little bit lighter. It could be as simple as Loki appearing, grabbing Thor, and then boom, now Thor and Loki are back together, and Thor is helping Loki with some type of time variant authority type deal.
True, because spoiler alert, but the Loki that Thor bonded with is dead, but the Loki that's figured out the time variant thing, he's the ending of Loki is so fucking good. Oh my gosh.
It's wonderful.
Yes.
So my thought is that we are pushing towards some either second tier boss or that's like relatively a big boss, or like we could end up with a resolution, I guess, where it's happy, but then at the very end it's like Loki shows up and say, hey Thor, I need you right now, and then boom, they end up somewhere else. It could end up being something similar to the ending of Doctor Strange, where it's like,
true,
somebody shows up and says, hey, I need you. I think it's going to be a little bit more climactic, where it puts a little bit more question marks in our head as to, holy fuck, what's happening with our boy Thor.
Yeah. And I hope so. That's my, again, I try to go into movies that I love with minimal hopes, so I don't get my hopes, let down. But I'm hoping the ending is much more enigmatic and much more questioning, so that they make the arrival of Kang the Conqueror that much more frightening,
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they will tie King into it, because for this one, it'll be, I don't, how do you think they're going to go about the new Thor? Will they go about that from a multiverse perspective, or will they go about it through a different perspective?
That's a great question, because as I said, I'm an MCU fan. I've read very little of the comics, so I don't know how the new Thor is going to come into play. And that's something I've been very much waiting to be wowed by Taika and see how that plays in. I love Natalie Portman. I mean, she's the star of my favorite movie, Annihilation. Best movie, in my opinion. And so...
I've never seen Annihilation.
Oh, you haven't?
Do I need to watch Annihilation?
Yes, we should watch it on FaceTime so I can watch your reactions, because it's my favorite movie ever, and it's so fucking good. And
when did it come out?
2018, I think. It's pretty recent. It was just before the pandemic.
Huh.
It's 16 or 18. I'm pretty sure it's 18 though. But it's
was it a big like box office banger, or was it just...
No, it was from Alex Garland, who wrote and directed Ex Machina And
Oh yeah, that's a great film.
the Dread movie, yeah, and it's in my opinion, it's the best like sci-fi horror movie that exists out there. It's impeccable. So, and Tessa Thompson from Thor is in it as well as
Tess is in
Natalie
it
Portman.
too.
Yeah, and it's incredible. So I cannot recommend that movie enough. I love it. When I saw it in theaters, it had only a limited theatrical release, and I went and saw it in theaters. And me and my friends stood out in the parking lot, and we talked for 2 hours after the movie, just dissecting it because it's that good. So
Wow.
it's incredible. Yeah.
I'll have to watch it. That's
Yes.
great.
Let me know what you think. It's my favorite movie of all time. I love it. So
That's literally your number one.
it is my number one. Yes.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's way high praise. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I will watch it at some point. Let you know. Well,
Sweet.
I think we've covered a lot of stuff with Thor 4. Were there any other items that you wanted to talk about? Anything else that you're hoping to see in it?
I can't think of anything. I'm ready to be wowed and surprised and to laugh and to cry and just to enjoy the whole thing. And
Oh, I thought of one. I know one. How big of a role do you think the Guardians will play in this? Do you think it'll be cosmetic, or do you think it'll be like almost like a team up? Do you think we've seen most of it in the trailer where they're like, here it is, or is it a full-blown team up?
I think we've seen most of it in the trailer. That's just my gut reaction. But it'd be nice if it was more than that.
So you're thinking it's in and out 15 minutes.
I think so. But I do love the Guardians of the Galaxy. I love all those characters. I would be very happily surprised if they were in more than the first act. But based on what I've seen in the trailers and just based on my gut reaction, I'm guessing they're going to be first act only. That's just my prediction. I don't know. I don't know.
We'll have to wait.
I hope I'm wrong. So.
And then I guess the only other question would be, do you think that any of the other characters like not Natalie Portman, but do you think that any of the other characters like Loki will play a large role?
I hope Loki does, but I hope it's very referential to the show Loki, because there's two separate Lokis now, obviously. So I don't know. I'm going into this movie I've been very reticent to learn things, and I just want to be wowed because, again, every movie I've seen directed by Taika Waititi has just been lovely.
Totally.
So I'm just like, I'm just ready to walk into it, So
totally.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, on that note, go see it. I'll go see it, and we'll chat about it soon.
Saturday or Sunday. We'll touch base. It'll be great.
All right. Sounds great, man.
All right. In the name of the God of Thor, this has been Nerds and Friends. Thank you, Mike Farrell, for your time. This has been wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.